we have 4 panelists here as well, and what I will do is I will do what I did with the others as well. I will shortly say your name, and then I will give the floor to you, so you give a short introduction, a pitch about you and the company, so we set the floor of who is here in the room. It's much nicer to hear it from you than I'm doing the full introduction. So we have Gun Drogset from Applied Autonomy. We have Harri Santamala from Sensible4, Christian Bering from Holo, and Peter Janevik from AstaZero. Nice to see you. And I will give the floor first, obviously, to Gun, the only woman in the room. And if you could give a short pitch about who you are and what you represent.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gun Drogset, and I'm the CTO of Applied Autonomy, located in Kongsberg, Norway. For 4 years now, we have been delivering solutions and knowledge on how to set autonomous vehicles into operation in a smart and safe way. We help customers to start automating their transport processes, and combined with our vehicle agnostic integration platform, the service for transporting people and goods can be optimized. We like to work in fruitful ecosystems with complementary actors, and that is a strategy from us working both nationally and internationally.
Thank you. Harri?
Hi, everybody. I'm Harri Santamala, CEO and one of the founders of Sensible4. We are a Finnish software company with the product of full-stack autonomous driving software, which we sell to automotive manufacturers, so OEMs and sometimes tier 1 suppliers. And we don't moonshot on robotaxis or private vehicles. Let the big boys from the West Coast do that, but rather we focused on last mile transportation of people or goods. And just a little bit, just like Applied Autonomy said, we also see that in this kind of new disruptive market, one must work across the value chain in order to actually take things forward into the real commercial business.
Thank you, Harri. Christian?
Hi, I am Christian. I'm the CEO of Holo. We're based in Copenhagen. I describe us as a technology implementation company, and the technology we implement is autonomous software on hardware that flies or drives out in real life somewhere. So since 2018, we've been operating in various countries across Scandinavia, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Estonia. So we've done shuttles, minibuses, and flying drones at the moment as well, working with Sensible4 and Harri on a project in the outskirts of Oslo at the moment.
Thank you, Christian. And then we have Peter.
Okay, I'm Peter Janevik. I'm the CEO for AstaZero, which is a proving ground. Much actually for the use of the companies that have just been introduced. So a test bed for the automated transportation system, then obviously the vehicles, but also the infrastructure around it, like connectivity, like testing of cybersecurity and other things that will be important in the future.
Thank you. You all mentioned that you've been doing pilots, and all the Nordic countries actually rank quite high on the KPMG's Autonomous Vehicle Readiness Index. Norway on the 3rd place, Finland on the 5th, Sweden 6th, and Denmark on the 10th place. And I guess we're looking forward to the report that is coming out very, very soon. But how long do we continue doing those pilots? And are we there yet that we should actually release level 4 on the streets? Who wants to take the first challenge there? I'm looking at Harri. Great, there's a wave.
Yeah, my hand is up here. I mean, if we look back how the autonomous driving hype began, the pilots were there to raise initial awareness, and they certainly did that. But they were part of the initial hype wave, and they certainly participated in that. But I think that the right answer to your question is that we shouldn't do pilots for piloting or demo or marketing purpose. We should only focus on operations that actually are there for the one sole purpose of becoming a permanent permanent commercial operation, and in the piloting phase they are used for learning and joint development of all parties.
I agree with you there, Harry, but then I will also agree that many of the companies also in this room would like to do their testing on their own, because it's not common to share that much, because we are in a disruptive market, right? We are in a situation where it's disrupting. We want to keep it close, still share. So how do we reach to that point, what you just said, then being more open and sharing, if we still want to keep our own knowledge?
I certainly can answer that, but I was hoping that somebody else would.
But you raised that, that's good. Christian.
Yeah, sharing what exactly? I mean that's the question. I mean, we have common interests in promoting autonomous vehicles and autonomous driving, no doubt about that. I listened in the last session. There was a lot of talk about regulation. That's one of the things that I think could be more coordinated. But of course, we want to add our special implementation power to whatever technology we're operating, and put our own mark on it for the area that we're working in, and then the customer that we're working with.
Yeah, and just sort of to add my 2 cents on this topic. So the collaboration, I think the natural form is to form collaborations across the value chain, across the ecosystem, and also to sort of involve the public-private people partnership angle, as it doesn't matter whether we trying to move people or goods. At the end of the day, it will be the end users who will be voting for success of any new service brought to the people, essentially.
I think one area where collaboration could be done is, for instance, I think you have a very good backdrop there, Harry, and also actually my own serves as an example of this. When it comes to definitions of operational design domains, for instance, what is a snowy environment? When can you trust that you can actually see the lane markings for an autonomous bus in a city environment, for instance? What is darkness? What is complicated lighting conditions, and so on? That is certainly somewhere where we in the Nordics could cooperate and gain a common competitive advantage against the rest of the world, I think. Sorry, Gun, you were a better person than me, and also raising your hand in a proper way. I cut you off there, sorry.
Gun, did you?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I kind of lost the internet connection for just a second there, so I hear that you continue the discussion, but Gun, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I think that it's important that the value chain is more than the autonomous vehicle, and that is something that need to be addressed, because there are barriers on each of the actors in this value chain. You have the legislators, you have the regulators, you have the transport operators, transport users, and also the OEMs, and also those who are creating services to provide tasks and to the vehicles. So if we identify the barriers on each of these stakeholders and actors in a smart way and pilot for this, focus on the piloting for reducing those barriers, I think we will sooner come to a scaling phase. But there are still a lot of barriers out there.
Well, that leads me actually very much to the next question, because I find the biggest barrier, if we talk about scaling, is still the different regulations in each of the countries. And we still like to think like the Nordic is a homogeneous country, region where we work together, we're collaborative, and people look to us. But still, there are differences in the regulations. So how do we see, how can we then scale up if the regulations are different? And what do we need to do to work with to get that done? I mean, collaboration is obviously one key, but how do we get down to the nitty-gritty in order to solve that?
I think the regulation is a very good topic, and maybe Holo is the biggest expert being active in all the countries, but we are also tackling with this issue all the time. And I mean, when we started in the midst of the hype, it was basically the regulation allowed like a commercial no driver in the vehicle operation in Finland and Greece, and to some level in Netherlands. It has been great to see that the sort of similar approach, but with different set of paperwork, has been adopted by many of the countries, including Norway and no lesser country than Germany at latest. And it's indeed a problem that the European level legislation is going to take some time. I know this has been a hot topic for many years, and it will probably take some time. And meanwhile, the national regulation is developing. But what we are still missing is that if we apply and fill all the paperwork written in English to one country, and which approves that, could the next country actually recognize this approval? And that would be already a huge step forward if we wouldn't have to redo all the paperwork and possibly even testing for every single use case.
Well, that's an interesting one, because if today you can't cross border because of the fact, and if we're gonna pilot, if we're gonna work on the security, if we're gonna work on the safe side, if we're gonna work on being the most advanced region with the autonomous side, we need to be able to cross the borders.
Yeah,
Then we need to work on the regulation.
we do have a one vehicle which is allowed to using same plates drive both in Finland and in Norway. Unfortunately, it's a Renault Twizy, so it has a little bit limited capacity. But we managed to somehow we managed to get permission to use the Finnish special plates for Norwegian operation last year. So this sounds like a small step, but it wasn't, and I fully agree with you that would go a long way on building future services.
Thank you, Harry. Peter.
Yeah, I think this problem is to a certain extent underestimated, because Harry mentioned the West Coast. I imagine it was not the Gothenburg, Swedish West Coast, but rather the American. But there's also competition coming up from China. And as far as I can tell, they don't have this problem. And they move fast, yeah. They made Huawei come from nowhere. And they can make autonomous driving also come from nowhere, in our view. But they have an internal market of 1.4 billion people. So they can do quite a lot of scaling up before we see them. So I think there's, to a certain extent, is a lack of sense of urgency on the side of the policymakers. They don't understand the long-term consequences it can have for companies such as the others in this board or in this panel. And this is very serious. So going forward, doing experimentation, actually, I think a new model of developing policies is needed, where policies are developed in a much more quick manner as opposed to the old step by step. I mean, we face a step change in technology now, and then we need a step change in policy as well. And as far as I can tell, the traffic regulation has evolved step by step since maybe 200 or 300 years in effect, and rate has to go up, and new ways of working to develop policy has to be developed.
I think, I don't know, Gundi, do you have your hand up? And at least Christian has his hand up.
Yeah, I would just say we're in the middle of this process. I mean, we are giving feedback to the Danish authorities based on what we learned in Norway and Sweden and Finland and other places to try and get the legislation changed to be more flexible based on our experience. We connect the different road authorities in different countries and try to get them to talk to each other. We are seeing what was mentioned by the other guys here, that things are starting to align a little bit. They are taking inspiration from each other, but of course we would love to see some European regulation. Where operating drones, where there's European regulation, it's a completely different thing. Companies all over Europe speak the same language, use the same definitions for the same terms. But I would also say it's not actually regulation keeping us from scaling. That is the technology. If I brought a sufficiently mature technology and vehicle that could fulfill the safety requirements to Norway, I would be able to drive it driverlessly by showing to the authorities that I can do it safely, sharing the data and basically making them trust us as an operator and the technology vendor behind it. The reason we're not scaling is that until we can take the safety driver out, there's no business case.
Okay, so we come back a little bit to the regulation and policy, but what other obstacles do we see in order? Oh, sorry, Gun, you had your hand raised. I'm gonna let you answer before I go to my next question.
No, I agree with Christian. It's the efficiency of the vehicle is an important part. We have been working with pilots in 4 years, and we expected that the improvement was coming much faster. So efficiency, the situation awareness of the vehicle is has to be improved so we can drive faster and have less unpredicted stops. And when we can do that, we can get a huge amount of new use cases and also new possibilities for new businesses to develop. So I think that is a key factor here. We're starting to be a bit impatient.
But is it you, or is it you putting forward those requests to the manufacturer? So the pain point is actually at the manufacturer's side because of lack of understanding or lack of willingness to push forward autonomous.
I think it's a bit conservatism, or they are, of course, concerned about the safety and such things. But every pilot we do, we try to stress the borders or the limitations a bit. So we have been driving the longest route in the 4th year, autonomous and mixed traffic. We have been doing on-demand solution in public transport. We had done taken the operator out of the vehicle in mixed traffic. So we try to always put some new elements to stress both the OEMs and also the regulators to learn and trust the system.
Okay, thank you, Christian.
Yeah, it is that. I mean, we're waiting for the technologies to improve, and in the meantime, we're trying to remove as many of the other barriers. You know, this is different from the old age of transportation, where it was much more linear. Here, there is a more exponential development potentially. Once the software works, it works in a lot of different places, and a lot of use cases will open up. But we're waiting for that magical moment. So you can either reduce the complexity of the routes that we're operating, or you can wait for the technology to improve. And so, you know, in some routes, if you go in a sufficiently simple route, you can already today take the safety driver route, but that's not really what most people want to do, right? That doesn't really fulfill the need that people were hoping for. And when the hype was higher, you know, the promises that were made were not that.
But interesting, so stay on that one, because what I'd like to know is that is the OEMs a little bit the old-fashioned and still a bit neglecting, and they're all waiting for someone like Apple coming up with their car now to kind of disrupt it and say that like they did with the smartphones existed when Apple came, but they kind of disrupted the market anyway. So is that what we're waiting for? And then we can say the technology is improving, or?
No, I don't think it's a lack of, you know, there's tons of investment going into this area now, but it also is a problem that is much more complex than what was anticipated to begin with. But we are seeing now this kind of catch-up effect, this acceleration a little bit, because we are now out driving, right? So now it's more of gradually upgrading the software, for example. It's not starting over on every single experiment.
Thank you, Harry.
Yeah, I think I pretty much share the perspectives of previous comments as we are sort of developing the software, which is essentially the hardest part of it. And what makes it really hard is that we need to basically we need to validate that we are as safe or safer as average human would be in any operational design domain we are seeking the approval for. And that is really the sort of essence of the problem, that humans are very creative in traffic on bending and stretching and breaking traffic rules and understanding sort of causality, that if there's for example, my favorite example is that you're driving on an urban area, you have a roadside parking next to you, and there's a football coming all of a sudden like maybe 20 meters in front of you, bouncing across the road lane. Any human would probably consider that there may be somebody soon running after the football, but this kind of difficult border cases are really what makes handling the safety at all situations relatively difficult, and that was I think not understood in the middle of hype when the over expectations were created. It takes humans 18 years to learn things on a level that we can go to the driving school. And we have a logic that's inbuilt in our heads that fits well to estimating what the other humans are doing in the traffic. But for the autonomous driving, it's easy to predict any rules and patterns. But when somebody is bending the rules or doing something with what they are not supposed to do, then it becomes much more difficult.
Thank you. Peter?
Yes, so it's easy to overlook the fact that automation is happening quite rapidly, but not super much for people transportation. The focus of this talk is people transportation, but from our standpoint, the quickest progress is within closed areas, generally moving of goods or rocks or containers and similar. This will increase the ketchup effect that somebody was talking about previously. Once these systems and the understanding of how to solve the closed areas have progressed enough, that knowledge is also accessible to simplify the transition to semi-open areas or fully open areas, like a dedicated bus lane could be viewed as a semi-open area, for instance.
And then the policy will be much more easier because it is considered as it's more confined. It's maybe less problems in the safety and security side.
Yes, in effect, you have self-driving goods carriers, just like in a car factory or something like that, but they are bigger and obviously more dangerous, but the basic use case is the same in effect.
But it's not hot as
no, for sure not.
But it's a very good point, and trying to create the business by adapting to what we can. And if we think about trains as an example, if somebody would invent them now, having this gigaton vessel which takes kilometers to stop, and you basically occasionally need to cross the road transport, and on the train stations, the trains may pass the stations which is full of pedestrians without any protective gates or anything. If you think about it, it's actually could be potentially very unsafe if you introduce it today. But just that people know how to interact with this and how to behave together with this form of transportation makes it safe and viable way. Although even then, sometimes these accidents do happen.
Thank you, Harry. Good.
Yeah, I would like to come back to the scaling issue because we have been talking much about the vehicles, but the vehicles is a part of a bigger chain, and if we don't optimize or digitalize the whole chain, or at least know what we're digitalizing, it won't scale. The autonomous vehicles won't scale because having an autonomous vehicle operating with no means or no system around, it won't scale. So that is important that we learn and also see how we can optimize and utilize the vehicles to fulfill the customer's need. That is an important part for scaling, I think.
Good point there, Gun. Peter, you raised your hand.
Yes, I agree with this view, and this is actually the reason why AstaZero calls itself a test bed for the automated transportation system. A lot of the improvement of efficiency of transportation will not only come from the automated vehicles themselves, but also better route planning, better optimization to solve for congestion on city level, for instance. This automated route planning on across all vehicles that try to do transportation work in the city, for instance.
Well, I need to start closing in, but I still want to know, how can you, as the company sitting in this room right now, how can you help with the collaboration and improve the scalability? And what is your role in this, in the collaboration part? What would you do in order to start collaborating more? Because that's what we need to do, all of us, and communicating more and sharing more in order to push the regulators, in order to prove that this will be the reality in year X. What is your role in this, and how would you start forward? Christian,
Yeah,
sorry.
I could begin. Yeah, as mentioned, I mean, we're doing it actively. We have written opinion pieces in Danish media. We talk to the Minister of Transportation. We go to public hearings, and we tell our story. It took us 3 years to get the first permit in Denmark that was ever given. The process should be easier from then on, but it was not a very pleasant process, right? So we use examples from other countries as well. You know, it's a really good way to get the Danish people very upset is to say that the Swedes or Norwegians are better, right? So that's always a good starting point. But now we also see another part of the discussion coming in. One is we started out with cost saving due to automation, but now the demographic discussion is coming in. There's a shortage of truck drivers. There's a shortage of bus drivers. One thing is to try and automate something that is already there today. But one of the agendas that will be coming up, can you actually maintain the level of service that you have today if you can't get the drivers in the future? So the political agenda is always changing. I think there are some openings in that discussion for us to kind of reintroduce automated vehicles again and show how far we've come. I think it'll be more accepted this time around than it has been previously.
Thank you, Christian. Harry?
Yeah, I think our role is sort of being a catalyst in the auto industry. So on one hand, we are pushing the OEMs to move forward with their products together with us. But on the other hand, we are working with PTAs like Router and PT operators like Holo to create the necessary pull, which is actually needed for the OEMs to bring those products to the market.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, so as a proving ground, we're neutral and open. We can serve as a meeting place for all of the multidisciplinary research and development and meetings and negotiations that have to be done. People can get there, see in real life how beautifully vehicle that Harry has developed negotiates obstacles and start to trust it. So we actively try to include everybody involved in this, again, multidisciplinary, tricky problem.
Very good, Peter. Thank you. And Gun?
Yeah, I agree a lot with what is said. We work with PTOs and PTAs and also the car OEMs on a daily basis, and also the regulators and legislators. So of course, look at the other countries if they are able to do it faster than Norway, and then they hopefully will adapt fast. We work also in uses also the network of international projects, both in Nordics, Interreg EU projects, and Nordic innovation projects, where we find partners in the Nordics, and that is important, I think, because we together will form a stronger team than by ourselves. So that is very important for us to find complementary and good partners, which we pay forward.
Thank you so much. I think Business Sweden, the next topic will need to be logistics and automation. I think we need to continue there. Thank you, Harry, Gun, and Peter and Christian for your time. So and I will hand over to Business Sweden right now because the time is short, and I'm sorry if I extended my time, but the discussions are so important. So Jessica, final words.
Yes, thank you so much, Jenny. And I agree with you. We knew it a bit before we started that we would feel like this. It's not enough time. But on the other hand, it just proves that we have a lot to talk about, a lot to collaborate about, and a lot to keep talking about. As you say, we have a new next subject or an old one. I mean, it's continuously important. But a few last words, as you said. Jenny, first to you, thank you so much for taking us through all our 4 panels today. It has been an honor. And of course, thank you to all our companies joining in. For Sweden, the Nordic represents a fourth of our trade. It is our extended home market, and it is a golden soil for collaboration and towards global markets. And I must say, it's so powerful to hear from all our panel guests today stating what the industry needs and what we need together from all our countries represented here today, from Norway, from Denmark, from Finland, from Sweden, saying the same, and that we need borderless mobility. I mean, we mentioned here, we have borders where big countries don't. We need scale, right? To not to move across borders. We also need scale in our business. We need speed. We don't have time. We need collaboration. We need predictability in innovative and uncertain times. We need customer interface, customer convenience, and sustainability. And I could go on for an hour just saying all the great conclusions from today. We also said during today that the green transition will also be painful. We need to find new ways and new incentives to change our behavior. We all need to make an effort. The technique is said to already be here, so it's time for the behavioral change and keep collaborating. From Business Sweden's way, we work with Swedish companies to grow global sales and with international companies to expand and grow in Sweden. And we really believe in Nordic collaboration. So we will continue working with this. And we will include all the conclusions from today in our report and in our work, our plan for 2022, to make what we can to make an impact for as much as or everything happened that we talked about today and in the coming logistics webinar, right? Because what we always say is, in the Nordics, competition, it makes us better. We are on the edge, but collaboration makes us so much stronger. And I would really like to finish this off with what's been said today, as we say in Sweden, plattan i mattan, and let's have full speed forward. So, right, Hanna, that's what we do. So thank you all from all of us, and talk to you soon.